Cimaglia. I'm a social worker at the Royal Ottawa, and I was asked to come and give a brief presentation on depression in older adults. So I want this, usually encourage people to be interactive if you have questions along the way, but definitely, you know, as we go along or at the end. So let's, I always like to begin with what is depression, because we use that word a lot sometimes. When we use depression as an illness, it's more than having a bad day or feeling low, okay? It's feelings of, it's more than that. It's feelings of sadness, hopelessness, loss of interest or pleasure in activities we previously enjoyed. It's having these type of feelings for a couple of weeks or longer, and it affects the whole person. So when someone is depressed, it affects their thinking, their feeling, their physical health. So it's really multifactorial. It affects a number of areas. So depression in older adults is not a normal part of aging. So it's not normal to be depressed because you're old. It is an illness that is common after age 65, because it does happen after age 65. What we do know, some of the stats, is that seniors living in the community, there's an estimate 5 to 10% will experience a depressive disorder that requires treatment. Okay. The rates are a lot higher in long-term care facilities, or as we used to call them, nursing homes, and hospitalized, and individuals that are hospitalized, and the chronically ill patients, that are seniors. And those rates go to about 30 to 40%. So older adults that are in long-term care or hospital or chronically ill, the rate of depression is a lot higher. It often goes underdiagnosed or misdiagnosed because it presents a little different as we get older. It's also could be a social thing, that it's not as easy for the older person to talk about being depressed. It's sometimes difficult to recognize because we might imagine depression to look a certain way. But what's important to know is that it can be treated. Okay, so it's an illness that can be treated. What we know about our older adults is that sometimes people think, well, it's only normal, you're getting older. But what we know that it's not normal, okay, and that means the person needs good benefit. So these are some of the myths, right? It doesn't happen, the person doesn't get depressed unless there's a loss or major stressful event. Okay, that's a myth. It's a character weakness, it's a personality flaw. Right? You might even hear that, or we hear that. I should be stronger. If you're strong enough, you should be able to pull up your bootstraps, you know. Being old is depressing in itself, just getting old. That's a myth. Right? It's normal to feel depressed when you're old because you face so many problems. You face so many losses. That's another myth. Depression is associated with lower suicide rates and mortality in older adults. That's a myth. Actually, quite a high suicide rate. Depressed mood is always part of depression, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So how do we recognize depression? So how do we know that someone might be depressed, or if you see it in yourself or someone else, how do you know? There could be a feeling of sadness, okay, or an absence of feelings, or a person says they usually feel worse in the morning, but as the day progresses, they feel a little bit better. Okay. The loss of interest or pleasure in normal, previously enjoyed activities. So if the person enjoys certain activities, no longer there's an interest in that, not feeling up to it. Less energy and increased fatigue. Problem sleeping, too much or not enough, or even if they are sleeping, they say, I'm not feeling refreshed in the morning. It's not restorative. It doesn't feel that I did sleep, if I did sleep 8 hours or 6 hours, whatever. Big feelings of guilt or worthlessness. Okay? The person could have that hopelessness. Difficulties thinking and concentrating, not able to make decisions, not able to focus on anything. would prefer not to make decisions. They just can't focus on it. There's an appetite change, either weight loss or increase. In older adults, a lot of times it's a weight loss. It's a big change in the weight. Feeling sluggish, agitated, or restless. Okay, just slow down, physically slow down, can't get going. Even the speech is slow down. I can't move very much. So everything kind of slows down. Thoughts of suicide or death, or attempts to hurt themselves. So these are things that we kind of look for, and what gives us an idea, if it is depression, if the person has 5 symptoms present, 5 of those possible ones, for 2 weeks or more, or 4 symptoms and a mood complaint. So they could say they're feeling sad and very unhappy about things, and then 4 of the other symptoms. So lack of sleep, feeling guilty could be 4 of the symptoms. So if there are those symptoms, persistent symptoms, okay, 2 weeks or more, the person is likely suffering from a major depression. Okay? And we will require treatment beyond just encouragement and support. Okay? So when we talk about this, the person is ill. Depression is an illness. Okay? It's not like when we talk about, oh, I just feel depressed today, I just couldn't bring myself. But then, 2 days, things kind of settle and so on. Okay? When someone has a depression, major depression, they are ill and they need the treatment. So what are some risk factors? What are some things that could predispose an individual, an older person, to suffer from a depression? Female predisposes us because we live longer also, right? It just happens that way. Widowed or divorced. If you have a previous history of depression, you are more predisposed to have another depression. If there's any brain changes due to vascular problems, so many strokes, or you've had other kinds of vascular, which means the blood flow, okay, and it causes some brain changes, the person might be predisposed. It's a risk. Major physical and chronic disabling illness, okay, any major health problems. Medications, if the older person is taking a lot of medications, what we know as we get older, we don't metabolize medication the same way, and so the more medications we're on, it could put us at risk. Okay? Excessive alcohol use, and again, the alcohol use, people might start as they get older because it makes you feel a bit better, just calms you down and so on, especially if you're feeling that little bit of agitation. But what we know about alcohol is that in the long run it is a depressant. Okay, we use it to solve one problem, it becomes a bigger problem. Low social support, isolation, living alone, not having a lot of contact with the environment and other people is a predisposing. Caregiver for a person with a major disease. So if you're a caregiver for someone who is ill with a chronic illness, be it Alzheimer's, different forms of dementia, or other chronic illness, major disease, the caregiver, yes, as a caregiver you can be predisposed to having a depression. And personality type, very dependent, very unable to really be on your own, deal with things, always dependent on other people, is a predisposing, okay? We call them predisposing factor, risk factors. What could actually precipitate a depression is a recent bereavement. So you recently lost either an individual, some health issues. And what we know about grieving is that it's normal. It's normal to feel sadness, and it's normal that the sadness could last for a while. When it becomes an issue is when there's the loss of hope. You don't envision, you can't envision life, okay, foreseeing life. So losing all hope and joy is not normal for grieving, okay? It's okay to grieve. You're definitely not going to be depressed. It's normal to experience sadness and so on. If you've lost somebody, if you've had major health issues, if you've recently retired, and so on. Okay. Moving from home to other places. If the older person has to move because they're unable to live independently or there isn't enough of a support network, yes, it could precipitate a depression. Okay. So any major adverse life events, any major big events, major stressors, yes, can precipitate. Okay. It's a risk. We talked about chronic stress with declining health, family or marital problems. Yes, can precipitate someone to suffer from a depression. We talked about the social isolation. And persistent sleep difficulties. If the person is having difficulty sleeping, we need our sleep. If we don't sleep well, it can put us at risk of getting depressed. So why do we treat depression in older adults? Because it works. All right. It doesn't mean only because now you're 65 that it's normal for you to feel depressed. Okay, it's not normal. And people can. They do with treatment. Okay. If depression is not treated, if you have physical problems, they will get worse because depression tends to highlight what we're not able to do. Okay. We get, if we have physical illness and we're slowed down so much, of course, we will have additional physical problems. Okay. Depression can cause death. How does it do that? Pardon? Yeah.
Kill themselves?
Suicide, yes.
Suicide.
Yeah. Okay, it's not worth living.
Yeah.
Okay. So it can cause death. That's why it's important that if the person is depressed, that they get treatment, either they seek it or they're encouraged to get treatment. Treatment will decrease or eliminate symptoms, restore lost function, and prevent future episodes. So treatment will decrease or eliminate symptoms. What we know in older adults, if they don't recognize, it's not always recognized as, oh, I'm feeling so depressed, I can't, I'm so sad. No, a lot of times what we hear and see is more physical symptoms. Okay, headaches, big headaches, can't figure out what's going on, stomach problems, and so on. And so when those symptoms, all of a sudden they disappear after they're treated for depression. Okay? And people will go through a lot of tests because they'll go in and they'll talk to their doctor about how their stomach problems, constipated, there's something wrong, or they might say, I think I'm getting Alzheimer's, right, and so on. Once they're treated for the depression, a lot of those symptoms kind of disappear. Okay? They don't have the same complaints. They restore their lost function, right? So if a person was active before, involved in their activities, they will go back to doing what they used to do and they get the pleasure out of it. And it can help with treatment, can help prevent future episodes. Okay? So what we do know about depression is that if you've had it once and then you get a second time, it's important that the treatment continues. So if you need to be on medication, because the risk is always higher. Like I had mentioned, if you've had a previous depression, the risk is higher for you to have another one. Okay, at some other point in your life. So once you're treated for depression, usually the recommendation is that you stay on the medication, okay, to help prevent future episodes. Why treat? Because depressive episode can last several years. It could last a long time, and that's what makes it very, dangerous, and quality of life can be very minimal for a person. And those around us are affected by the illness. It's quite contagious, right? If you're around someone who's depressed, you will feel it. Right? You'll feel the slowing down, you'll feel the hopelessness, you'll feel it from the other person, okay? So family members are affected, friends, because they feel also, what can I do for this person? So what can you do as an individual, right? Remind the person who's suffering from that depression that you care. Learn about depression. Learn exactly like today. Learn the possible symptoms. What do you look for? Validate their expressed feelings, but give them hope. So validate, acknowledge that they're feeling, yes, they are feeling horrible. But we know that with depression you can get better if you're treated. Okay? So you have to give them hope. Provide the practical assistance if needed, temporarily. Okay? If they need help to get things done, okay? Offer the assistance. And try to include the person, encourage the person to do it with you, but offer help if there's that you could provide. And take time for yourself, right? If you're a caregiver or your family member, it's important to also think about taking care of yourself because depressed mood is contagious. It could bring you down. You could feel overwhelmed at times when you're dealing with someone, when you're with someone who has a depression, okay? So that's really in a nutshell what depression is. So when we use the word depression, right, because we use that word, I'm depressed, but when we use it from a health perspective, when we talk about depression, we talk about all those symptoms, okay, that the person's not able to function, they're feeling very overwhelmed, they can't concentrate, they can't make decisions, their sleep is disturbed, they might have feelings of guilt, excessive feelings of guilt of things that happened in the past and so on.